We're combining all the best old school wisdom with all the top new school methods to bring you the optimal way to coach and play the great game of baseball. This is the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass with Coach Bo.
Welcome to the 80-20 Baseball Coaching Masterclass. I'm Coach Bo. This is our weekly meetup where we discuss how to go from being a good coach to a great coach or a new coach to a prepared coach in an efficient way. We're taking the best of the old school and we're blending it with the best of the new school, and then we're trying to make that combo even better. And as always, I'm fired up to be here with you. Just watched the Dodgers and the Braves Game 7 last night. Awesome game. Just a wonderful series. Man, the Braves are awesome. The Dodgers are awesome. Just two great teams. And I'm excited to watch the Tampa Bay Devil Rays versus the Dodgers in the World Series. Andrew Friedman, the Dodgers president, obviously most of you know, came from Tampa Bay when the Dodgers hired him, and he has done an outstanding job. His team, his organization, the group of people that he surrounds himself with has done a phenomenal job. But the Tampa Bay Devil Rays just kept going with that resourceful attitude and approach. And man, do they make the most out of their payroll. What I always say to people about the Dodgers is Andrew Friedman has kept that resourcefulness, that resourceful attitude towards building a team and building an organization. And now he just has a lot more money to do it with. So he can be very resourceful, and he is very resourceful. In fact, the Dodgers have more homegrown players than Tampa Bay. But what he's also been able to do is cut the checks when he needs to cut the checks, i.e. Mookie Betts, etc. And that is a really hard combination to beat. And that's why the Dodgers have been so consistent over the last 4 years, 5 years. And in fact, they've won their division like 8 years in a row. But they've been so consistent because they've been resourceful, and then when they need to, they can afford those big time players like Mookie Betts. But I think it's also important that when we look at these teams in the playoffs and the World Series, and you see these great teams out there, and we look at their payroll and we look at their statistics, one thing you really got to make sure you pay attention to, coaches, is their team culture, the vibe. Last night, Kike Hernandez came off the bench and hit a pinch hit home run, and the first guy there at the dugout ready to celebrate with them was Jock Peterson, the player, the guy, his teammate that he pinched hit for. Dave Roberts does a phenomenal job of coaching the team culture, and he is an outstanding team culture manager. And Andrew Friedman came in, and one of the first things he did was trade away, get rid of, not re-sign the players that he felt were not going to help the team culture. And you can go read articles on that. There's the players. I'm not going to name them here. Matt Kemp, Hanley Ramirez, superb talents, but we're not 8, 9, and 10 teammates. Remember, on a scale of 1 to 10, you want your players to all be 7s or above when it comes to being teammates, high character, hustle, etc. But I am excited to watch the World Series, and both teams that are in the World Series had the best record in the regular season, albeit a 60-game regular season. It's great to see. It's going to be awesome. David versus Goliath, although the Tampa Bay Rays have some pretty big Goliaths on their team. Some of those pitchers are big dudes, strong physical hitters. So in all likelihood, this World Series is going to be a lot of fun to watch. Now, something that wasn't so much fun to watch. The other day, Friday, I was invited. My neighbor, he's 7, and he plays flag football. And his parents invited my wife and my daughter and I to go out to the game. It was a beautiful afternoon here in Boise, out by the fairgrounds. And they invited us to go watch the flag football game. Like I said, it was a Friday evening, so we were looking forward to getting out. And little side note before I talk about the game and the disappointment that I had. My neighbor, the father, Nick, he actually played for what is considered the greatest high school football coach of all time, Bob Ladouceur, at De La Salle in Northern California. He actually played football and started for them in the middle of their streak where they won 151 straight games. And he has a really cool national championship ring he showed me. Although I had to ask him for it, he's not one of those guys to show it off. I said, hey, I got to see one of those national title rings, and the thing was pretty phenomenal, pretty cool. And if there's a coach you want to study, Bob Ladouceur is a great coach to study in terms of detail, but also simplicity. It's very much like the movie Remember the Titans, when the two coaches were sitting there in the coach's office, and one of the coaches has a binder that's 100 pages thick, and the other coach, Denzel Washington, has 8 plays. He goes, I run 8 plays and we run them like clockwork, or something to that effect, where he just basically says, hey, we're not trying to have a bunch of fancy plays. This has always been, in my opinion, Lane Kiffin's problem, and that is, it's a problem of a lot of offensive coordinators. They think more is better, and really what it is, it's just be really good at a certain amount of plays. And baseball coaches could take the same approach when it comes to bunt defenses and first and third offenses and signs, minimize optimize it and be really, really good at just a few of them or just one of them. And that should take care of 90%, 95% of whatever you need to take care of out there on the field. So I get out to the game and literally we're only on the sideline for a few minutes and the coaches started to fight. Well, they were going to fight. And then one of the assistant coaches held back I'm guessing he's like the head coach. I don't know. It's 7-year-olds. Who really cares what the titles are of the coaches? I mean, I care about the game. It's great to see these kids out there. It was awesome. The flag football field was set up really cool and they had pylons and the refs on both sides. It was cool. But the coaches, these two dads, one of them was just one of those dads, just like a weasel. And he was mumbling something under his breath, or I don't know what he did. Or he said something to a kid who was celebrating, a 7-year-old. And the other dad, the other coach, went off. One of the coaches, like I said, one of the assistants grabbed the guy and separated him, and he had to do everything he could. And I don't know any of these people. I was just there to see my neighbor play, Colton. He's a great little kid. So I don't really know, but I know coaches, and I know this is not something you want to see on a field with 7-year-olds. So I'm very laid back, sitting. This isn't my game. These aren't my kids. I'm going to sit back and just kind of blend in with the fence and just watch and enjoy it and have fun. But there was no way I could sit back and watch this. I got up next to the coach. I said, not in front of the kids. And he looked at me like he was going to fight me. And I said, not in front of the kids. This is completely unacceptable. Completely unacceptable. These are 7-year-olds. And here's the thing. He calmed down and he went over and one of his buddies was there and he said, oh, he's a UFC fighter, this and that. And I said, well, typically the guys that are UFC fighters or martial art type of people, those are the coaches. Those are the people that are usually the calmest because they don't feel like they need to prove or this and that. But he lost his temper and the other coach was being a weasel. Both of them are wrong. One wanted to fight. The other one wanted to just kind of be a little weasel out there and was all about winning. I think he had short man syndrome and it just wasn't a good situation. In fact, I think both of those coaches should have been kicked out of the game for sure, if not suspended for a few games. If I ran a league, I'd have a zero tolerance policy on that. Are you more about being nice to the parents, the dads, or are you about the kids? Because that imprint that's going to leave on those kids at 7 is not good. And maybe, one time isn't going to affect all those kids or even maybe one of those kids negatively long term, but there's absolutely no place. And eventually those imprints are going to add up to things, whether it's a small trauma or something that's going to be imprinted into their mind as far as aggressiveness. And that's the way to handle things as they get older. It's just completely unacceptable. And I was really disappointed. Now, after it calmed down, the rest of the game was a lot of fun to watch and a lot of cheering. But no, those coaches weren't even asked to leave by the referees. And the referees were high school kids or college kids. So it's not on them, but it's on the league, and the league should just have a zero tolerance policy. And basically, if they don't leave, then they just pick up the cones and the ball and then just close the field and that's it. Game's over, and put it on the coaches. But it was really tough to see. And guys, coaches, it's not about you. It's about the players and the kids and about making the environment something that's going to get them better prepared for life. And fighting over something like that is not going to show them the example of how to go about living their life or going about handling life in the best way. Absolutely not. Completely unacceptable. I see these videos of baseball coaches fighting. Completely unacceptable. There's no time for it. The sport needs to double down on this. They need to hammer down on this and just kick these people out of the leagues. They need to kick them out for good. They need to suspend them. There should be no ifs, ands, or buts. And it should be immediate. It shouldn't even wait till it gets physical. It should be even when there's verbal, you're gone, out of here. There's just no tolerance for that in 7. This isn't Major League Baseball. I mean, professional baseball, okay. Those are big boys. Those are grown men. Oh, whatever. They're going to do their thing a little bit. But no way is this acceptable in high school or youth baseball. No way. Those coaches should be eliminated. I'm telling you, and I've said this before, the players, the league, the teams, and especially those players would be way better off just running their own team. They'd be way better off running their own team. The Sandlot. I know you're going to say, well, Coach Bo, that's a movie. I'm telling you, players would be way better off running their own team and figuring it out. Okay, with maybe a little supervision so nothing gets super out of hand or any emergencies or injuries are taken care of. But man, that was my first sporting event in like 7 months because this COVID deal, and what a bummer. It was almost like, is this really happening? It was too bad. Now, the rest of the game was fun and it was a good evening, and just wanted to kind of talk about that. Coaches, it's about the players. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have discipline. That doesn't mean you don't enforce rules, but you definitely don't fight and act a fool. You don't act like a 3-year-old when you're coaching 7-year-olds. All right. Don't act like a 6-year-old when you're coaching high school. All right. Let's grow up. No time for that. Just don't coach. Don't coach. There's no time for that. Now, part 1 of this episode, I was watching Game 7 with my pops, who is a longtime Dodger fan. And in fact, my dad went to Dodger Stadium the year it opened in 1962. He went to a game there. He grew up in the San Fernando Valley. He grew up a Dodger fan. I grew up a Dodger fan. And I was watching Game 7, and Corey Seager's batting in the first inning. And the first pitch he sees it's elevated up. It's a good pitch to swing at aggressively. It was a few inches above the strike zone. He swung and he missed. And my dad says, well, I'd rather them go up there aggressively than go up there passive. And I said, I think this is kind of that. Well, I said to my dad, I said, this is kind of the narrative that you got to go up there. And this is the conventional wisdom that hitters either go up there aggressive or they go up there and they're very patient and selective. And I said, you know what? I think neither of those is the best way to go up there, especially with less than 2 strikes. I was talking to my dad about this as we're watching game 7, as the first inning rolled on, the second inning. We discussed that it's better to have your hitters be neutral, not aggressive, not a premeditated aggressiveness, nor a premeditated passivity, except if they're in plan take. Go back and listen to these hitting approaches, the 3 hitting approaches I've talked about at length. Plan take would be a predetermined non-swing. With 0 strikes, the hitter wants to get some intel. They want to see the pitch. They want to time it up. They want to see the trajectory of the pitch. They want to see the speed of the pitch, whether it's extremely slow or extremely fast. I told you the plan take is really good with 0 strikes, not with 1 or 2 strikes. With 0 strikes, a planned take is good against atypical pitchers or atypical type of stuff. Now, I told my dad, I said, it's better for hitters to go up there and be neutral with their approach and let the pitch dictate the aggressiveness or the passivity. Let me say that again. This is so important, coaches, when you're coaching hitters. The common coaching point or the common approach to hitting is either you're aggressive or you're very selective. Be aggressive first pitch. Be aggressive first pitch. No. Be ready to hit first pitch. Be ready to hit first pitch if you're in plan A. Be ready to go first pitch. But do not predetermine whether you're going to swing or not, or your aggressiveness level. Let the pitch, remember, not necessarily the strike zone, but the pitch dictate whether you're going to be aggressive or not. And if the pitch dictates that it's a meatball, if the pitch dictates that it's a pitch you're going to drive and crush, or a pitch that you can really put good wood on or good metal on, then you're aggressive. But you can't go up there. We can't coach hitters to go up there and be aggressive before we see all of the evidence, before we see the most important thing when it comes to determining our level of aggressiveness, and that's the pitch. So we have to see the pitch before we can determine whether we need to be aggressive or not. It's a fool's errand going up there with a premeditated level of aggressiveness or passivity, all right? You should be neutral. You should be ready to go on time. So a neutral approach. We talk about this going up there and being aggressive or not aggressive. Again, I just think this is something that we got to just get rid of. That's old school thinking. That is one of those things. There's so much old school wisdom that's just spot on, and will always be spot on. But I think that's something that we need to overcome, that conventional wisdom that's holding our hitters back. They need to go up there and let the pitch dictate. But now they need to be ready to hit if that's a good pitch. They need to be ready to be aggressive if it's a hitter's pitch. But they're not going up there premeditated aggressive. They're not going up there in a predetermined, I'm swinging here. No, they should never go up there with the mindset that they're swinging at that next pitch. All right, because they haven't seen the pitch. You haven't seen the biggest piece of evidence you need before you can determine the course of action. If you haven't seen the pitch, the worst thing you can do is go up there and say, I'm going to swing. And so you have to be neutral, ready to swing if it's a good pitch. Last night I saw some real good fastballs right down the middle and the hitters took it. And I was like, man, you got to swing at that. So a coach that might be listening goes, oh, you like your hitters to be aggressive. I'm like, yeah, I like my hitters to be aggressive when it's thigh high down the middle of 95. When major leaguers 95 is just, that's nothing to them. So I love Corey Seager. I'm a huge Corey Seager fan, really big fan of his. And he swung at a pitch that was a little elevated and he was aggressive on it. And it was a good hitter's pitch to swing at. Obviously it stayed up a little and it stayed firm up to the top of the zone, just above the zone, the vertical rectangle. But my whole point was my dad was like, it's better to go up there and be aggressive. I think you go up there neutral, but when you get the hitter's pitch, you got to put a good swing on it. You got to swing aggressively at a hitter's pitch. But swinging aggressively or going up there aggressive when you don't know if that pitcher is going to be wild or bouncing pitches, you got to see the pitch before you decide how aggressive you're going to swing. All right. So you got to train that approach. Part 2, sticking with the Dodgers here. I tell you what, I told you earlier, Dave Roberts, I'm a huge Dave Roberts fan when it comes to team culture and sticking to the blueprint that the organization, the front office has laid out. He's a very, very smart coach. He's a heck of a wise baseball player, except for one area. I don't think he's very good at handling pitching staffs, but that's understandable. He was an outfielder. All right. He was an outfielder and he wasn't a pitcher. He was a hitter, an outfielder, not a pitcher. And so could you imagine like in football, the defensive coordinator calling the offensive plays late in the game? Or could you imagine the offensive coordinator for a football team late in the game calling the defensive coverage or the blitz package or whatever late in the game? No, it wouldn't happen. And in baseball, this is something that I'd really like to see get changed. I'd really like to see the head coach, especially if he's an outfielder or a former outfielder, they should not be in charge of pulling pitchers. Now, I know the Dodgers and a lot of teams have a plan. They run the numbers. And I even tweeted this out the other day. I said the Dodgers are the best or one of the best teams teams at calculating the math. They play the percentages as well as anybody. They are so good with the math. Baseball, the Moneyball, go read Moneyball. The whole thing is all on math. It's all math and percentages and numbers, playing the percentages. But there's a problem with playing the percentages all the time because not every time do players regress to the mean. And not every time, remember, you're playing the percentages, you're playing the averages, but there's outliers. And the key is to be able to not do the math sometimes, but to be able to read the situation. And so they pulled a pitcher in game 2, I think it was early. They pulled Gratterall when it ended up losing the game. The rest of their bullpen gave up the house. And I thought they should have left him in. They should have read his body language. They should have read his stuff. I mean, his body language and his stuff was better than ever. He's always kind of a little animated, Gratterall, and his stuff is always firm and hard, but his stuff was a tick better. It was just a tick better. He was a little bit more dialed in, and I thought they shouldn't have let him just go 2 outs. They should have rode him out at least another inning or 2 because you're looking at him, you're going, he's dialed in. And I know they have a lot more information than I'm privy to because they know a lot more about workload and stress and arm condition and things like that. But I know baseball enough and I know pitching enough to say that they should have read that situation and they should have let him go. And instead, they went by the bullpen by committee kind of approach, which has worked and overall probably works better, mixing up the pitchers and whatnot as you move through the game. But in my opinion, coaches, you got to use the percentages, you got to use the math, and you got to use the numbers, and you got to use the stats, but you also got to be able to read the situation sometimes and go away from that. Now, this takes an acute awareness. You really got to be in touch with what you're looking at. You got to be really in tune with the game, and you really got to be aware and in the moment. But you'll see it from time to time. You'll see it. You'll see kids that these players are not always the same. They vary in their focus from game to game. They vary in how they feel. Sometimes they're just locked in. All right, they're just locked in, and sometimes they're not. Sometimes their stuff is just a little better. Their arm feels a little better. Everything's dialed in a little bit better. The umpire fits their strike zone a little bit better. The hitter's matchup is not as good. Whatever it is, you got to read that. So I'm a huge fan of playing the math. I'm a huge fan of the math. In fact, I tell everybody can we talk about in life, kind of one of the best things I've learned over the years is play the percentages. Play the percentages. You put your seatbelt on. It's not because you think you're going to get in an accident. You just know if you have it on, there's a much better chance you're going to survive. Even though the percentages are very low that you're going to get in an accident, you still put the seatbelt on to minimize your percentages of getting seriously hurt or thrown out of the car and whatnot. So that's just an example of the millions of examples of playing the percentages. So the Dodgers, I think, should have a pitching coordinator that deals with pitching, and sure, he works with the front office and he works with the stats and all of that. And he also then reads the game situation. Somebody who can really read closely a pitcher when a pitcher's dialed in or not dialed in. So to sum up part 2, that we need to read the acute situation in front of us and not calculate the math. Put the math aside and use your reading skills and go with your gut and your instinct on that. Now, more often than not, you're going to go with the math, but every once in a while, what you read is not going to add up like the math is adding up. And that's okay, because that is called playing the percentages with a little variance from time to time when you see something that doesn't add up, or should I say, adds up a little differently than what your numbers on the spreadsheet say. Yes, it's true that the best predictor of the future is the past. What's happened in the past is the best predictor of what's going to happen in the future, but it's not a perfect predictor. It's not a perfect predictor. So if you talk to statisticians, people that do a bunch of studies and things like that, and they use the math, they get a little caught sometimes, I think, in believing that everything that they have from the past is then going to equate to what's going to happen, or it's going to determine or show exactly what's going to happen in the future. But that's not a perfect situation. It's not a perfect situation. It's not a perfect scenario. In any case, life is there's too many variables in sports and in life. So the best predictor of the future is definitely the past, but it's not a perfect predictor. So we play the math, we play the math, we play the math until something really stands out when we're watching the game and when we're watching our players closely. All right, part 3, and this is ingredient 8. This is ingredient 8, 8 out of 8. This is the last ingredient from the Drill Mastery Guide. I'm going to read right off of my Drill Mastery Guide, the 80-20 Baseball Drill Mastery Guide. And yes, this will finish up our 8-part series when it comes to designing optimal drills, as perfect a drills as possible for any type of skill, for any sport. And we've been more specifically using baseball, obviously, as our examples, but this drill guide will help in any sport. Now, to review, ingredient 1 for an optimal elite drill is relevancy. How relevant is it to game action? How relevant is it to the game? How often does it happen during a game? The 80-20 principle describes and it kind of exemplifies this extremely well in terms of not everything we practice and train for has the same impact come game time. And it's really important that we take our drills and that we first say, what do we need to practice and what's going to have the most impact come game time? And thus, are the drills that we are doing, the drills that we are using for training, training, are these the best drills? Are these the things that we need to cover to have the biggest impact on the game? And are we allocating our time effectively on that? So part 2, or ingredient 2, is time allotment. How much time do you set up and allow for your drill? So not all drills are equal, and not all drills have equal impact on the game. So you have relevancy. Is it something that actually is going to take place often during the game? 2, how often and how much of that drill should you do? That's a very important thing to consider. That's ingredient 2. And ingredient 3 is authenticity. How accurately does the drill replicate game action? Ingredient 4, difficulty. Is the drill more challenging than the game situation? Remember, use the 20-40-40 rule. 20% of the drills, in my opinion, approximately plus or minus, 20% of the drill should be a little easier than the game situation. 40% of the reps should be about game level. And then 40% of the reps should be more challenging than your typical playoff game for your level. So is the difficulty of the drill, is it 40% of it harder than the game? 30% of it is a good chunk of the drill harder than the game is going to be. And I'm a big fan of using the playoff game or the championship game as the caliber in which you use as the measuring stick for that. Ingredient 5, efficiency. Is the drill as efficient as possible? This is probably the biggest flaw in all baseball drills. They're just so inefficient. Baseball is just a very inefficient sport. It just is. If the world was run like baseball's been run, we'd be stuck in the dark ages still. It's very inefficient. Very inefficient. All right. Ingredient 6, competition. Can the drill become a healthy competition? Where can we add competition? How can we get competition into the drill? Ingredient 7, fun. How fun is the drill? Can we make it more fun? Are the kids having fun doing it? Not all drills are going to be a lot of fun. Sometimes just moving it fast and efficient isn't necessarily going to make the drill more fun, but it'll make the drill go faster, and players like fast, they like action. It's not necessarily something they're going to be laughing and giggling about, but it's something that it'll move it fast, and they like fast. They like things moving along. Ingredient 8, safety. Is the drill set up as safely as possible? Safety is paramount. Safety earns the top spot on the pie chart. And on my drill mastery guide, I have a pie chart. Safety earns the top spot on that pie chart. Safety is always priority number 1 for a coach. And the safety of the players must be monitored at all times. You are not going to eliminate all risk. If you're trying to live in a zero risk environment, or trying to go and practice in a zero risk environment, or just trying to live life in a zero risk environment or in a zero risk way, I think that's a fool's errand. Life inherently has risk. All right. And by trying to avoid 100% risk aversion is just, first off, it's not going to happen. All right. So you're chasing fool's gold there. All right. Baseball is not a contact sport like football. However, the ball and the bat can cause, as most of you know, or maybe have had some experience firsthand with it, can cause serious injuries. Baseballs are fast moving solid objects that can quickly travel hundreds of feet. Again, I'm reading right off the baseball mastery guide here. Baseball bats are made of metal, solid wood, and designed to be swung fast. While the coach cannot prevent, like I said, the coach cannot prevent 100% of injuries. That's still the goal. That's the goal. All right. Now, the goal is to prevent 100% of injuries, but the realistic expectation is that you're going to have a few here and there. But you're trying to prevent 100% of injuries, but knowing that your expectation is probably not going to be what your goal is. Training drills can move quickly, yet still be safe. Training drills can be very challenging, yet very safe. To conduct the ultimate practice drill, the coach must make the drill authentic, challenging, efficient, competitive, and fun while maintaining a safe environment. In this section here, we're going to learn how to do just that. Most serious baseball injuries are a result of only a few types of accidents. By setting clear overarching safety rules, the risks can be significantly reduced. The 2 most common, highly avoidable incidents that cause serious injury on a baseball field are, number 1, randomly located practice swings, and 2, errant throws. The 2 most common incidents that cause serious injury on the baseball field are, number 1, randomly located swings. In other words, players are swinging their bat in random locations at random times. All right. Not on the on-deck circle, not in the batter's box, not in the batting cage, but randomly located practice swings. And number 2, errant throws. Errant throws. And in both cases, bystanders or people walking by can be seriously injured. There should be no confusion regarding what actions are permitted and what actions are never permitted. So there should be no confusion with your players. They should know what actions are permitted and what actions are never permitted. Be very clear about the do's and the don'ts. Do not wait until a player gets hurt to make safety adjustments to the practice environment. Well, insofar it's something that could be eliminated or something that could have been prevented. So if it's something that could have been prevented, or you saw it, you thought of it, or you saw maybe ahead that it could be an issue, don't wait till somebody gets hurt to make the adjustment. Make it right away, okay? Even if you think it's something little or very unlikely, if you can make a little adjustment with it. Take the chances, play the percentages, and make the adjustment. Be proactive, play the percentages. Anytime the players are handling baseball bats, it must be made very clear to the players as to when and where they can swing the bats. I believe in having a year-round rule that requires players to keep their bats in their baseball bags until given coaches consent to take them out. That may be for the first drill of practice, or that may not come until the back end. Either way, and what I mean the back end. So they may need to get their bat out the first drill of practice, or they may not even need to get it out until the back end of practice. Either way, the players first need permission to take their bats out. Once the players are given permission to take the bats out for use, it's highly recommended. Now, this is for a team practice, obviously. If it's an individual training, that's a whole different ballgame. It's highly recommended that designated swing areas be established before beginning a hitting drill. Clearly define when and where the players can swing the bats. For example, the coach will tell the players that swings are only permitted in the main batter's box and the on deck circle, for example. Be strict and be firm. As most of you know, a baseball is a solid object and can cause extensive damage to the face and the head. Errant throws and inattentive players are the main elements resulting in significant facial and head injuries when it comes to errant throws. Inattentive players and errant throws. It's typically an errant throw combined with an inattentive player, and the inattentive player may not be somebody who's inattentive because they're just not paying attention. They're lackadaisical with their mental game. It may be somebody who's doing a different part of a drill, or his focus is somewhere else, as it should be, because that's how the practice has been designed. Either way, errant throws and inattentive players are the main elements resulting in significant facial and head injuries. Typically, and again, I've seen 3 times in my baseball career, 3 times I've seen teeth knocked out and fall on the ground. 2 by a ball, 1 by an errant fungo hit. Baseball hit one of my buddies, who actually was my roommate at Long Beach State my freshman year. He got hit, and he lost 4 teeth, and he had, I think he said there was 4 more that were hanging on with the braces. The drill was set up terribly, and the fungo hitter, which was one of our other teammates, hit a line drive, and he wasn't paying attention because he was taking a throw from an infielder, while that fungo hitter was hitting a ball to the first baseman who was playing back, and he was the first baseman on the base, and it was a bad situation. Should have been some kind of netting or something, or should just been eliminated that part of it. And then I also, when I was in Little League, an errant swing that took place, knocked out a couple teeth, and to this day, the ex-teammate of mine, has fake teeth. Another time, there was an errant throw that hit a teammate of mine in the face and knocked out a tooth or dislodged a tooth. Either way, it's not good. So errant throws or errant hits and inattentive players, the combination are the main elements resulting in significant facial and head injuries when it comes to baseball training, baseball practices, and baseball games. Typically, players that are watching the baseball be thrown or watching the ball hit do not get seriously injured. While someone is hitting, every player that is not behind a fence or a net should carefully watch the ball come off the bat. During defensive work, players engaged in varying tasks or players that are standing around chatting should never stand in the area behind someone who is receiving throws. And it's not necessarily directly behind it. There's a space that there should be a no man's land, a large buffer zone, because throws are going to go left and right of the target, not just straight over the top. So if you're standing right behind, actually, in fact, sometimes standing right behind somebody is the best place to stand, not off to the side. That's where the player who's receiving the throw can't get to it, and then you're 11 or 12 feet off to the left, and that's when you get smoked in the face. Never allow drills to overlap to the point that one group is near the firing line of another group. Never allow drills to overlap to the point that one group is near the firing line of another group. For example, during a ground ball drill, do not have your shortstop fielding ground balls while the third baseman is simultaneously turning 5-4-3 double plays, or at least don't have your shortstop coming in on anything, moving in on any baseballs, any ground balls, while your third baseman are simultaneously turning 5-4-3 double plays. There's a good chance sooner or later the shortstop will come in, like I said, on a slower hit ball, on a chopper, and end up right in that throwing lane. That's one example of many that you just got to watch out for. It's always better to be late than never to making safety adjustments. So yeah, sure, there's going to be adjustments that are going to come about as you already designed the drill, as the drill's already flowing along. Stop it immediately, make the adjustment, explain your rationale really quickly, and then keep it going. It is really difficult to foresee every unsafe situation. It's just really difficult to foresee. Even somebody like myself, or coaches that have been around the game for a long time, it's really difficult to foresee every unsafe situation, and we can't eliminate all risk. It's just not going to happen, especially with new drills and with new teams and things like that. But once you recognize a potential problem, or once you see a drill as it unfolds, you need to stop and modify that drill if it needs to be modified, if there's any kind of safety issue that can be adjusted. All right. Now, you might say, well, for example, like you're hitting ground balls to a player, there's a chance that ball is going to bounce up and hit the kid in the nose, hit him in the cheek, or hit him in the eye and get a black eye. Those things are unavoidable for the most part. Now, if you're hitting really hard ground balls to players that that great or whose skills are a little behind. You want to challenge them maybe by hitting hard ground balls or things like that. You can use the Incrediballs. Those are great. I wouldn't use them for the whole drill, but maybe for the time where you're trying to hit it, hit things hard, or a tennis ball with a tennis racket if you want to get real close to players and just really have some fun with it and hit some shots at them. Tennis ball with a tennis racket. Again, this would be a small portion of any of this training because these are not game-like. A tennis ball is much lighter than a baseball, but things like that can mitigate a lot of the risk but also upping the ante when it comes to the challenge. So there's some creativity that can be done along the way. Additional safety tips. 3 additional safety tips as we finish this up. Use dome cones to designate or use cones to designate the warm-up practice swing area. Include a buffer. So designate. Clearly mark the practice swing area. All right. Not every practice field has on-deck circles, nor do the players. On-deck circles clearly isn't usually big enough for the bat swing. Typically, the head of the bat's going to pop out of that circle a little bit. Safety tip 2, we just covered a little bit. Incrediballs or tennis balls can be used to safely challenge your players. And tip 3, space the players out during drills that involve throwing. Build in a buffer. Use the whole field when it comes to a long toss. Use the whole field when it comes to a long toss. Yeah, you may say, well, I want my players to hit the glove, hit the target, hit their teammate in the chest. Hey, we can live in a utopian world or we can live in reality. And reality is build in a buffer and then teach your player, and then also simultaneously teach your throwers, your players to be smarter, better, more accurate with everything while also building in a buffer. There you have it. Those are the 8 parts. This is the final part, safety. This is a finishing of an 8-part series to building elite optimal drills. The 2 biggest flaws, looking back over this whole series, the 2 biggest flaws in the baseball coaching world, the 2 biggest flaws when it comes to drill design, in my opinion, not the only 2, the 2 biggest flaws are inefficient drills, slow drills, just inefficient, not moving fast enough, not enough quality reps. Players getting bored. Move fast, play fast because the game's going to move fast. Or play fast in practice and the game's going to feel and move slower when you get there. And the other part that I think is most misunderstood and not done as well as it could be is the relevancy. Using drills or training things that are the most relevant to success in the game. If you're spending 30 minutes on first and third offense or first and third defense, if you're spending 30 minutes on bunt defense and then you turn around, now if your practice is 4 hours, which I don't recommend at all, I don't think any practice should be more than 2.5 hours. Even like colleges, I would cut it at like 2:45 and that's it, or maybe 3, including all the cool down stuff and the cleanup and everything like that. But if you're spending 30 minutes on bunt defense and then you turn around and spend 20 minutes on ground balls, that's crazy because you're going to get 17 ground balls in a game and you're going to have 1 or 2 bunt defenses, and you're also not assuming that the players can't just make a bunt. You're assuming just the pitcher can't get off the mound and just make the play, right? So coach the big things, coach the things that have the most impact on the game, keep your drills moving efficiently, fast. Players like fast. It slows down the game. It's a win-win all around. All right, now go right now and confidently design those elite drills now that you have all the parts to knowing exactly what makes an elite optimal drill. And that's going to finish up episode 48. We'll see you back here next Tuesday when I put out episode 49. Until then, take care of your health, take care of your family, and take this information, go out, make your players, your team better, make the baseball community a better place. This has been Coach Bo. Take care.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.